I'm Nic Jafarieh. I am one of the founding members of the club. I was president when we got the committee structure organized, and I led the effort to get the club incorporated and obtain the tax exempt status. And I think there was a handful of us. I think there were probably about 15 of us at the time, and I was the club president for another two and a half years until membership got to about 250, 260. We had this listserv, and we would get together occasionally for happy hour to go on bike rides, and I remember one time getting an email that made me very uncomfortable. This is a story I've never told anybody until now, but I feel like I want to share it with our membership 15 years later. But in many ways, I view that as one of the greatest watershed moments for the Tri Club. I got an email out of nowhere. I used to monitor the mailbox for info at DC Tri Club, and occasionally I'd get an email and I'd get all excited because somebody was interested in triathlon. And one day I get this email, just a brutally scathing email. This person was telling me, "Are you even a real club? You don't have any training. You don't have any merchant partners. You don't get together. What are you? Are you just pretending to be a club?" And I was so deeply offended. I said, "Well, yeah, of course we're a club." But there was a part of me that really got bothered, because very often in life, the truth is probably what hurts the most. And I looked around and I said, hey, when I look at all these other clubs like MCBC and the running clubs like the Striders and the Masters, we can really be better. And I started looking around. I did a lot of research for the next 3-4 weeks into what it is that makes those clubs so great. And that was really the start of laying out the groundwork for the committees. I came back and decided, you know what, if we're going to do this right, we need to have a structure and an organization. And so, I looked at how others do it when they do it well. And they all had dedicated people giving their time, putting energy, putting money into making the organization better. And so we created a committee structure, and I wanted training to be a core part of what we do. Wanted it to be a social club because I got frankly tired of riding my bike by myself. And I started emailing the core group of people and to invite them to join a working board and see if they want to pitch in with these committees. And I was incredibly surprised to see that not only they were willing to participate, but they were willing to put in an incredible amount of time and energy and make the club grow and become an amazing force in the DC area. We would get the group together and we would have these incredibly existential debates about what kind of club we want to be. Do we want to be a club that's small, focused towards the elite? Do we want to be a club that's really focused on training? Do we want to be more of a social club? And ultimately, there was some robust disagreements, I have to say, but ultimately the view that prevailed was that the kind of things we wanted to achieve, we had to have a critical mass of members, and we had to have financial resources to do them. There were also just some challenges early on. When you don't have a whole lot of people, it's really hard to get momentum created. So when we first launched our real website, one of the things we wanted to do was create a sense of active energy, participation. There were a lot of lurkers. We wanted to pull out the lurkers. So my directive to every one of our 12 directors was that every single day you are required to go on the message board and make at least 3 posts. I don't care what you say. If all you want to say is bump, that's all you got to say, but you got to post. And that's kind of the notion behind critical mass. When people started seeing, hey, you know what, there's something going on this forum. The forum became just an unbelievable force in triathlon. People would post on our forum. They don't even live in this area. They're like in, Ohio and New York, and they're posting to our forum asking questions. So we sort of early on just getting the machinery moving and giving it momentum was really, really key. I remember, the happy hours. It was really important to me personally for the happy hours to be successful. Again, one of these moments where somebody tells you something that makes you feel uncomfortable and it kind of gives you that kick in the butt. We had a happy hour and I think maybe 3 people showed up, and this new person came, kind of looked around, looked there, saw like 3 people, turn around and left. And I was like, wait, what just happened? So we really tried hard. I really wanted everybody to come out. And I remember going to a happy hour in Clarendon, and 15 people showed up. And I looked around and I said, we've arrived. 15 people came to our happy hour. And so getting the momentum, that was really key, because I knew that if we got going, then people would just gravitate towards the energy. Another example that I talk about a lot, because I'm incredibly proud of it, is the first year we showed up at the club championship at Diamond in the Rough. There was 8 of us. We got absolutely decimated. You can't show up at a club championship with 8 people. It was almost humiliating. And that day, I decided that the next year we were going to increase that participation by 120 people and make it 100 and bring back 128 people. And then the following year, with the addition of all the new triathlete program participants, all the membership drives that were very successful, we increased, I think that year we increased membership probably tenfold. Once you have these visions and you set these goals, it's incredible how people get motivated, get behind it. And we were able to bring the next year 128 people to Diamond in the Rough, and I've told this story to others as well. Neil Semmel, who was a race director at that race, he until this year when he retired from Piranha Sports, he was absolutely floored by the fact that year over year, we went from 8 participants to 128 participants. Everywhere you look, it was DC Tri Club members wearing DC Tri Club gear. It was incredible. We had a tent, we had a grill, there were people dancing to music, and there were people around at this race just amazed by this just new concept they couldn't even fathom in the world of triathlon, where racing in a tribe at that time consisted of just arriving by yourself at some dark hour in the morning, racing, and going home afterward. And that really, the energy that the DC Tri Club brought to the Mid-Atlantic region, race after race, it really changed the picture of how racing was done. And other clubs tried to imitate that, and there was a point in time where we were a little annoyed that other clubs wanted to imitate, and they would steal text from our website. And then we realized, look, the reason why they want to imitate you is that you're doing something really fantastic and they want to be part of that. And we realized, triathlon is not a zero-sum game. We can all have amazing clubs and get together at these races, compete against each other, and all make the sport better. And when the regions, the federation started seeing what an incredible force clubs have become, I got invited to join the board of the USA Triathlon for the Mid-Atlantic. Clubs became a huge focus of the parent federation. They started the National Club Challenge, and today it is an absolute certainty at the highest level at USA Triathlon that growth, influence, and energy comes from the clubs, and they're absolutely mindful of that, and I'm really proud that in some ways our club had a lot to do with that.
My name's Cory Churches. I joined DC Tri Club in its infancy in 1999 because I was looking for something interesting to do. I had friends who were doing marathons and seemed super painful, and I thought triathlon sounded like something I would be better at doing, and I'm short attention span, so it suits me. I helped, with the formation of the club from a listserv on Yahoo distribution to a more well-established and formal member-driven organization. I think when we first started, we'd have these ad hoc ragtag happy hours with 10 to 12 people who would attend, and we'd constantly look around the bar to see who looks like a triathlete, because nobody knew what anybody else looked like. So I think from that humble beginning of, just people looking to connect, to have camaraderie in kind of an interesting setting and feel their way through what does it mean to be a triathlete, to what it's become now is it's a pretty big achievement. I think some of the early decisions, I feel like the early group of folks who guided the development of DC Triathlon Club were kind of entrepreneurs and a little bit of, now you might call them startup mavens, because we kind of made everything up. When didn't have any rules, there weren't any preset guidance that were set forth by anybody else, so we were sort of trending a path of our own. I know there was a great amount of passion and dedication in the beginning from probably at least 10 to 15 people who were involved in both setting training routines as well as sponsorships, cultivating sponsorships and membership, and making sure that members felt as though they were getting value for their membership and felt connected to the organization as a whole. One of the big areas that I think helped do that was the open forum, where no question was too stupid and everybody could have an opportunity to ask and respond, which was fantastic. So the organization itself was very grassroots driven. So if members said, I want to do this, we found a group of people who had interest and motivation and said, have at it, figure it out. We don't have expectations. We aren't setting limitations for you. And if what you do results in, a bigger club interest, then fantastic. I mean, I think I didn't realize that the grassroots LGBT happy hours had turned into the tryout community. That's probably a pretty big accomplishment of DC Tri Club as a whole, because I think, as far as I'm concerned, there's always been an athlete LGBT community in DC, but I think DC Tri Club was one of the first to harness it in a formal way. And I wasn't a ground participant in it, but I certainly supported the effort, and I'm super proud to see that it continues. The other one was the New Triathletes program that was the brainchild of Kristi Smith, who was really looking for opportunities to just get more training in before she went and raced, and we just sort of pulled it together in some way. Somebody figured out what it takes to get a pool permit, and we tried not to be obtrusive in Haynes Point for laps, and then people ran around. I think the very first one, everybody got splits and goodie bags and a post-race meal that any race organizer would be envious of. So there was certainly a big effort to make sure that people felt that their participation was worthwhile. No one was earning their living from organizing triathlon stuff. So Heather had to figure out who are the big manufacturers and how does one get a kit designed. No graphic arts background, and Louis Garneau we went with white, which once we got them and swam in open water, once they turned brown. So we never went that way again. And blue seemed to be much more easy to spot and didn't show the dirt as much, which is, there are worse reasons to pick colors, right? We used to have happy hours kind of haphazardly, and then I think we instituted them as the third Thursday of the month so everybody could count on where they were going to be, and we rotated them around geographically so that one area didn't get too heavily represented, and, folks from Bethesda always felt like they had to travel to Capitol Hill or whatever. And then I think at one point there were so many, not exactly splinter groups, but the diversity had gotten to the point where there were sub happy hours on maybe every second Thursday, or it became very happy hour driven, which was great because that meant that people were looking to either find some downtime from training, because most often we were all in some mode of Lycra or performance material with a helmet or a swim cap, and it was hard to kind of connect and get to know each other when you weren't training. We used to have I'm sure you guys probably still do it, the Christmas party, but one of the first ones was at the Lucky Strike in Gallery Place. So we had bowling and cultivated donations for a men's homeless shelter. So I feel like there was always some aspect of charity. So you would do something and then tag on a charitable donation to motivate a sense of community that, yes, you were participating in triathlon in this space, but at the same time, there was a broader community that wasn't involved in triathlon at all.
Kristi Smith, resident of DC and former triathlete. I have to admit, I have not done one in a while. And every once in a while I think about doing one again, but I am now just more a committed runner. 2004, I was fully in the club and I trained and things. And I said, I have learned so much in just this year, from all of you who have a lot of experience. I wish I would have known this when I was starting. And there were other people that felt the same way. And so, I think they had already been starting of doing a new triathlete program. And the one thing that I brought that was probably different than a lot of people who were in the club is that I was not a hardcore athlete when I started. I think you find a lot of people in the club who, do one of the three things a lot. Like they were runners and they want to try triathlon, or they were bicyclists, or they were swimmers in college, or something like that. I was not any of those things. And so, I said, well, if we do NTP, I think we should make sure, we should have a route that's for more experienced people, but we should also have people who are, off the couch and coming from it. And so, so we decided to start it, I guess, early in 2005, with the idea of training for an event in the summer of 2005. We learned a lot in that first year. It was primarily, we did some online research and came up with training plans. We had events. We had group training, I think, every Saturday at Haynes Point. Just runs or bikes or bricks. We also did a training triathlon at Haynes Point. We rented the pool and did, a whole little triathlon in the program. And I can't remember if the first year or the second year we did open water swimming, because I know for me and for a lot of new triathletes, open water swimming, your first experience doing it should not be in a race. Because it's just overwhelming. And I think it was the first year, but I can't remember if it was the first or second. We actually had one of the new triathletes lived on the Chesapeake and had a house that had water access. And we went there and just got everybody in the water and, made them get really close to one another and start swimming. one of the big improvements the second year of making the goal race be the club championship is then that you also had tons of people out there supporting each other, which I can't even remember what our first race was. Maybe it was Luray. I think it might have been Luray Triathlon. The first year, that was our goal race. And we had some people that came out and did the race, but to just have a big, a lot of people out there racing with you, and then there, just a lot of supporters in general, I think definitely added to the sense of accomplishment and camaraderie. Also, a big thing was getting the kits, the DC Tri Club kits. I think they were offered the first year we did NTP, and a few people got them, because when you're getting, the sport is so expensive, and then one more thing you have to buy, and just like the ordering and stuff. But the second year, it was something we very much encouraged, because we were just like, look, when you get out there, everyone will know that you're a part of the club, and even if they don't know you, they'll cheer for you. And so I still remember, like, when the kits arrived, everybody got their kits, and they were so excited about them. That was definitely a fun experience. It took a lot of work, but I'm very proud of it. And it's shocking to me that it still continues in some ways. If you would have asked me when we were, developing our little program, I remember being kind of shocked at how popular it was. Even the first year, when I think it took 5 days or a week to fill up, we weren't sure we could even get 50 people. And then the next year, when I said, I think we expanded it, and it was, in a day or two. And then I think by the third year, it was hours. You just kind of realize how much it was something that people wanted. I think the first year, we just collected people's money, they had to come with a check to the first orientation meeting, but NTP was in part, how we realized, we needed to have capability on the website to collect money, and do things like that. So yeah, it definitely pushed the club. It made the club, I think in many ways, kind of grow and become a more established organization faster than it would have if we didn't have NTP. Just because we also wanted to make sure that we showed the people who signed up for NTP that the great things about the club, and that the club was ready to accept them. So I think it forced even people who weren't in, even members who weren't actually helping day to day with NTP, were just helping make the club stronger in part so that it could support NTP.
My name's Ed Moser. I was been with the club since about 2001, and been very active in it since then. The club was started out with a very small group. There were about 12 people in the club in 2001 or so, and it was a real fun group to be with, because it was kind of like a high-tech startup firm. Because we started out with a very few number of people, but the growth was explosive. Within a few years, we had 1,000 people. So we went from a dozen or so to 1,000 in a short amount of time. So you had all these exciting people, by definition exciting, because they love sports, they love multi-sports, all coming in great waves into the club. So it was an exciting place to be in. The club was very bare bones at the start. It had sort of almost like a punk rock feeling to it. We had no clubs, no programs, so we had to do everything by ourselves. Some people would actually go to the shore of the Potomac, plunk down their gear, and go swimming at whatever spot they picked in the river. I remember one time, John Zastro, the first webmaster of the club, and we hadn't done a triathlon before, but we really wanted to, so we did our own triathlon. We started from my swimming pool in my apartment building in Arlington, and we swam a mile of laps. Then we got on our bikes outside the apartment, and we rode down to Mount Vernon and back, which was about 25 miles, about an Olympic distance for a triathlon. And then we ran a 10K along the shores of the Potomac, along the Mount Vernon Trail. Unfortunately, back in 2001 or so, we knew nothing about nutrition or hydration. And I collapsed at the finish line, and poor John Zastro, he collapsed about a mile to go on the race in the 10K, and I had to go back and find him where he was spread out on the Mount Vernon Trail, exhausted. So it was pretty. It was very basic sports back then. Every year or so, I put together a comical overviews, perspectives on the year in triathlon, 2006, 2011, what have you, and that sort of turned into an informal chronicle of the club over the years. So I think that's why they say club historian. And also, I'm old, and I've been around a long time. And that's the good role for a historian, because they've actually lived through everything. One memorable moment in the club, I think I'm wearing the shirt from it, was the Myrtle Beach half Ironman back in 2010. It was one of the first trips where the club put together a large group of people to go to another city outside of Washington, D.C. We've done that to San Diego and Chicago through Ryan Troll and whatnot. And we went to Myrtle Beach that year, a big group in a big bus. And it was a debacle because we rented out a bus for our trip from a bus company that was failing. It had terrible maintenance, it had terrible bus drivers, and our bus broke down 3 times on the way to Myrtle Beach. We didn't get in until 11 o'clock that night, and we had the race the next morning. And I remember the race times the next morning. Everyone had a terrible race. But it was a great bonding event because we spent so much time together in the parking lots in South Carolina waiting for the repairmen to come 3 different times. And so everyone wound up being much more friendly than they were before. Some people say that I seem to be ubiquitous, to be everywhere on the trails around Washington, D.C. It actually isn't me. Like Superman, though, I have a fortress of solitude in the North Pole, where I keep a number of clones and robots, and it's actually those that you see in the trails around Washington.
I'm Travis Siehndel. I joined the club in 2006. I was a member of one of the early classes of NTP, joined the board, and was club president in 2008.
I'm Joe Coyne. I joined the club in 2005. Did not do NTP, but joined the club as soon as I moved to DC. Was a president in 2009, and Travis was 2008, and on the board for a couple of years doing race director and things like that.
I think just like any good story starts, it involved alcohol and a late night. And a friend talked me into doing a triathlon, and I had never done it. I didn't have any experience road biking, didn't have any experience swimming. And I looked for help to sign up, or I had signed up for the New York City Triathlon. I looked for some help to start training, and I found NTP in the DC Triathlon Club. And I was living in Annapolis at the time, and I actually drove in every weekend that first year or so that I was in the club to do training and clinics and all the good things that go along with NTP. And I met people like Joe and other friends who are still some of my closest friends, definitely here in DC. And that kind of got the hook in me, so then I moved to DC, and here I am several years later, still hanging on.
Moved to DC after doing my first triathlon. Found out about the club, went to a Thursday morning, I guess it was a Thursday morning bike ride. Met a couple people, everyone was like crushing me in the workout, told me about the happy hour that night. Went out to a happy hour, met Mark, the first president, Eric Getz, he was, I guess, only a vice president, but the builder of our second website and still the guy that runs Total 200 as well. And I was out with them until I think like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they were talking about, or Mark was talking about leading a run the next day at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, all right, these are the guys I want to hang out with. This is pretty cool.
After I finished NTP, I did a couple of races my first summer. I was hooked and I was in, so I joined the club and I was on the board, and one of my main things then was to become an NTP leader after that. And those of us that were there then, I think we worked really hard to continue growing the program kind of into what it is today. Taking it from 50 people to 150 people, we maybe even had one class that was close to 200 people, all led by volunteers, as it still is, and just 3 or 4 key leaders, and then some core club volunteers that helped out. Yeah, I think I was a participant in either the second or the third class of NTP. I can't quite remember which one. And it was about 50 people. I think there were 2 co-leaders. I remember Chad Lewis and Kristi Smith were the 2 main leaders organizing everything. And they did a great job. It was great for me. We had a lot of people in leading clinics and just organizing things, and club members showing us the way. I remember Rob Falk bringing in a fancy bike that I'd never seen a time trial bike in person before. So things like that were kind of run by club members. Now I think there's more partnerships with club partners, whether it's coaches or the like Rose PT clinic or different people like that who can really bring in specialists. So I think it's improved over the years, but it's still, I think, is still very modeled very closely after what Kristi and Chad and everybody sort of set off from the beginning.
We redid the website the second time. We filed taxes for the first time because apparently we were negligent 4 years or 5 years prior.
Unfortunately for Joe, he followed me as club president, and I probably did nothing to help fix the taxes and nothing to make sure that we were following the rules. So
I don't know
that sort of got dumped on his lap after many years of being neglected by myself and previous presidents, I think. But Joe fortunately got us above board and all straight with the IRS. They're no longer knocking on our doors.
I don't know that. Do you guys still follow taxes? So, the training races, yeah, they were different back then. I think it's at a park now in Virginia, right? So we used to do the 3 training triathlons at Haynes Point Pool. We'd kind of do them unofficially, illegally, whatever you want to say. But we'd get the permits to rent out the pool. We'd rent out the pool in the morning, and park police wouldn't really mind us so much.
Yeah, Ed had a bike that he really loved and probably put 100,000 miles on, and was intending to put 100,000 more miles on it, and it got stolen, I think from the Haynes Point Pool. Is that right? And he put feelers out all around town trying to recover it. And finally some guy says, I have your bike, and I'm going to meet you at the Southwest Safeway on Thursday at 4 p.m. And at that point, Southwest was still gentrifying and had some rough pockets in it, so we thought, well, Ed needed some extra firepower to back him up. So Ron, Joe, and I all showed up, and I think we kind of separated, hiding, so we could keep our eye on Ed, and if things went south, we could come in and flex our muscle. Unfortunately, the bike never appeared. The guy never showed, probably because he saw Joe's biceps and was scared off. But we tried to lend our triathlete muscles to help Ed get his wheels back. The old days, it was friendlier, I think. It really was friends, and it was very Capitol Hill centric. So it was friends, neighbors, and if you were new to the club, it's because somebody else brought you into it, I think. And it's good for the club to grow out of that, but for those that were part of that, was really special. And it's the reason I live on Capitol Hill now, and the reason I moved to DC, I think, more than anything.
That was the reason I moved to Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
I'm Julie Kennedy, and I was the president of the DC Tri Club in 2010. I got my start with the club when I joined the NTP program in 2007. And I had never done a triathlon and was a marathon runner who was terrified of swimming in a race and never taken a swim lesson in my life. And a friend had told me about the club, and she was a member, and she encouraged me to come out to a couple of happy hours where I met a number of members, and everybody was so nice and supportive and friendly, and so I decided to sign up for NTP and completed my first triathlon in 2007, and then became a co-leader of NTP, and joined the board in 2009, and became president in 2010. So that was my journey. When I was starting with the club, I had experience with some marathon training programs, and I actually made a suggestion that I thought, well, we should try to have a program where we all train together and picked a goal race, and something similar to what I had done in with my marathon training groups. And so when I joined the board, that was one of the things that I had proposed and thought would be a good addition to the club, to have that, and to have because the club has a lot of great great resources, and there's so many people that you can find a good training partner, but having a little bit more of a structured program I thought would be very helpful to people. Particularly, I found for myself, once I did the NTP program was so structured, and you have the whole group and you all join together and you're all doing the same things, and it was great because you just had that camaraderie and support and a lot of resources. And then after that, it was kind of like, now what do I do? What's next? And so, the natural thing, of course, is to go on to the longer races, more races and longer races, and try to get faster. But I thought it would be helpful if we could have a little bit more structure to training and bring people together so that they could all be training with a common purpose, and so that's where I came up with the idea and thought that it would be useful. And then myself, I wanted to train for Ironman and wanted to have that support, so there was that. And then the Olympic distance program kind of evolved then later into more like a speed program, helping people to improve their times, because initially it was just helping people to train for the Olympic distance, but there wasn't too much delineation from what NTP was doing, and so that evolved more into a focus on improving results and performance versus just sort of getting it done. And I was an NTP co-leader, and just seeing people from that vantage point of, and I went through it myself too, but seeing people coming into the club and being so excited about triathlon, and then when it comes to the half Ironman program or the Ironman program of, oh my God, I did my first 50-mile bike ride, or my first 100-mile bike ride, or my first mile swim, or all those milestones, and and seeing people be able to achieve those is amazing. And so helping put in place a framework where people have the support that they needed to do those things is great, and just gives you a real feeling of accomplishment to be able to contribute in that way. And just seeing the people's excitement at being able to accomplish their goals was pretty amazing.
My name is Alyssa Morrison, or probably better known to the DC Tri Club as Coach AJ. I have been a member of the DC Tri Club for over a decade now, joining around 2006. I've also been a coach of many of the training programs. I started coaching the Olympic distance program back in 2010, the Half Ironman program in 2011, and the Ironman program in 2012. I originally got into triathlons because as a physical therapist, I saw that there was a need for healthy training programs and training plans for athletes, since we're very good at kind of pushing our boundaries and ending up injured. And due to my background, I decided to get into coaching so that I could try to provide a kind of healthier alternative to a lot of these athletes who were finding themselves chronically injured. And then one of my most exciting memories of the DC Tri Club was back in 2013. It was at Ironman Lake Placid. It was the goal race for the Ironman training program, which was exciting, but we seemed to have just all the energy and motivation accumulate in one race where we had literally, I would say, a couple dozen athletes racing, and then a large DC Tri contingency that came up to either be a Sherpa or a supporter or a spectator. And I just remember that we got a big group photo at Ironman Lake Placid, and there was probably close to 100 people in it. So that's pretty exciting for a race that isn't necessarily in our backyard where everyone was. It took some time for them to make the trip up there, but to get such a large DC Tri contingency in one place and everybody wearing their kits and their DC Tri colors, it was really exciting. So it was one of my proudest moments as both a coach and an athlete. I couldn't actually find a firm number on the number of people that we've been able to kind of progress through the different training programs, but I can promise you it's been quite a few, 100 probably. I know just between the Half Ironman and Ironman training programs that I've been coaching since 2012, that I would say that we've probably put, a couple hundred through both of those programs, which is exciting.
My name is Charles Brodsky. I'm a longtime DC resident. I am an avid triathlete. I am married to a professional triathlete that I met while training for triathlon. I'm currently the co-founder of a tech company in DC called Full Measure Education. We are one of the fittest cities in America, and it was unfathomable to me as I was on my way to do an Ironman in Coeur d'Alene that we didn't have a triathlon in DC. I was passing over the Memorial Bridge. I looked down at the river and across to the beautiful roadways, and couldn't imagine that we didn't have a triathlon. That was the genesis of the event. From what I understand, from Phil Fenty, who is Adrian Fenty's father, he is also one of the original triathletes. He was competing as early in the 70s in triathlons. He told me that for more than 20 years, people have been trying to get permits to produce a triathlon in Washington, D.C. And because of the bureaucracy involved working with the National Park Service and upwards of 28 police agencies in the District of Columbia, no one had ever been able to secure permits to produce a triathlon. There are really two very large challenges. The first is that understanding who has jurisdiction over which part of the land that you need for a triathlon. So, for example, the water in the Potomac is of the jurisdiction of the District of Columbia, regulated by the District of Columbia Metropolitan Police Department, and of course the Department of the Environment. But all of the land on the border of the Potomac River, and indeed the land underneath of the water, so the river bed itself, is controlled by the federal government through its National Park Service. And so negotiating how to secure permits for the use of the land was very challenging. What made it even more challenging is that the National Park Service had at the time a policy against triathlons. They just simply refused to permit one. And the District of Columbia has a law that makes it illegal to swim in the Potomac River. It's a legacy law from the 70s. And so I had to convince and lobby the District of Columbia Council to pass a law making it legal for us to swim in the Potomac on the days of the nation's triathlon. I then had to lobby the Department of the Interior at the very highest levels to convince the National Park Service to flex on their policy and allow us to produce the event. The DC Tri Club was nowhere near the size then that it is now. But on a percentages basis, they had a huge turnout. We only had, in the first year, 480 competitors for the First Nations Tri. And at the largest, we were 7,200 athletes, which made us the Guinness certified largest Olympic distance triathlon in North America. This was their hometown race now, right? This is what they lived to do. They didn't have to travel to Columbia, Maryland, or Reston, Virginia, or Luray, or Lake Anna. They could literally wake up and bike to the course route. It was amazing.
Hi, I'm Luke Holman. I've been in DC Triathlon Club since 2011. I first heard about DC Triathlon Club in the end of 2010. I was doing a running race down at Haynes Point, and I ran into Patrick Surface, who's been in the club for many, many years. He was recruiting people down there for the club. He told me about the Elite Team application that was coming up and encouraged me to fill it out, and I've been part of DC Triathlon Club ever since. DC Triathlon Club launched the Elite Team in 2010. I joined the Elite Team a year later in 2011, and when I was when I started with the Elite Team, we had, I believe, 5 men and 5 women. Some of them, people like Courtney Benedict and AJ Morrison, are still pretty highly involved in the club. They were very strong athletes on our elite team, and have been very strong members of the club since then. One of the things that I really love about DC Triathlon Club is just the camaraderie among different members in the club, among people that you've known and been friends with and raced with for years, and then also the new people that you meet that you just become friends with so quickly. And DC Triathlon Club really does an exceptional job of bringing in new people, and new people at all levels, everything from beginners to fast elite athletes, to people trying out Ironman for their first time or their 10th time or their 20th time. And so it's just truly incredible to see the camaraderie there. I tell you, what's really blown me away is some of the running races that I've been doing. And I've been more involved in running recently than triathlon. But one of the things that really blows me away is it seems like every race that I do, no matter how big or how small, I always run into somebody else from the club. And, oftentimes in like an out and back 5K, 10K type of a race, I'm always surprised by the number of "Go DC Tri" shouts that I'll get out there when I'm running in a race wearing my singlet or wearing a DC Tri t-shirt. And so it's always really encouraging just to see the support from this race from people and oftentimes from people that you don't know either. When I think about DC Triathlon Club, one of the things that really stands out to me that might not be initially apparent to new members or to other people in the club is just the way the club comes together at a time of need. One particular story that I would want to highlight is back in 2012. I was racing Mid-Atlantic Club Regionals, which was held at Indian Head State Park, General Smallwood State Park in Indian Head, Maryland. And it was held at the end of one of the hottest weeks that Washington, D.C. was having on record. And I'm somebody that doesn't do particularly well in heat. I collapsed from dehydration once in high school, and I had another mild incident of dehydration back then as well. And so it's something that I try to be aware of when I'm out there racing in heat, try to be real careful. But I didn't do so well that particular day. I got through the swim just fine. I got through the bike just fine. I was actually coming out of T2 with about a 2.5 minute lead or so on the race. And so I thought it was in pretty good shape. I decided to drop the running effort level down from a race pace down to kind of like more of a tempo level effort in a way to try to mitigate my body's temperature and still complete the race in the hot conditions that we're in. The run was an out and back, run out 3 miles, run out 5K, turn around and come back. And I remember going around the turnaround. I remember passing by mile 4. I remember passing by Patrick Surface going in the opposite direction. And that's really about all I remember from the race. And really for the next 28 hours or so, I collapsed about a mile later from heat stroke. And that's really where the support of the club came in a way that me and my family are just eternally grateful for. When I collapsed around, mile 5.5, I'd actually run off the course. I made a wrong turn. I was just out of it. I made a wrong turn, and so I was a little bit off the course. I collapsed. Ryan Troll, who was our club president at the time, he decided to come out to the race to cheer on other people in the club that day. He wasn't racing himself. He just wanted to help other people out. And when I collapsed, he was the first person that saw me. He immediately called the paramedics to come in and help me out. And, I'm just eternally thankful that he did, because in a situation like that, every minute counts. When they got to me, they told me that my blood temperature was 106.7 degrees, which is... It's really hard to live after your blood temperature gets to that type of a level. Generally speaking, 104, 105, 106 is kind of considered an extremely dangerous range to be in. And had Ryan not been there at the time to see me collapse, immediately call for paramedics, I probably wouldn't be here right now. But he wasn't the only one from the club that helped me out. When I got back, when I got taken into the ambulance, Ron Benedict, who has been a long-time volunteer firefighter, he was talking to the paramedics a lot about just the condition that I was in and how they needed to get me quickly to the hospital. After they airlifted me to the hospital, Ron and Courtney Benedict came in just to meet my parents when they came in. My parents didn't know that anything about what had happened. Steve Carlson, one of our former club presidents, had to call my parents and let them know the condition that I was in. Ron and Courtney followed the ambulance to the hospital so that they could meet my parents, so that Ron, who had experience as a volunteer firefighter, could describe the situation that I was in and what they might expect when they came in to see me. So it's stories like that that just, when I think about the club, that's something that I didn't sign up for. You know, I signed up to join a triathlon club where, you know, I'd meet new people and you know, find new training and racing partners. I didn't realize the club would save my life one day. And if it wasn't for, you know, several individuals that had been acting very swiftly and, you know, very selflessly on the course that day to help get me to safety and help support me and help support my family, I wouldn't be here right now, and it also would have been a much more difficult experience. I think about like Adam Stolzburg and Kim Goldman came to visit me in the hospital later on while I was recovering, and it's just things like that are just an incredible touch that this club shows. It's just an incredible selflessness on behalf of many, many members of the club, and I'm eternally grateful for everything that the club's given me, for all the support that people showed me and my family during that very difficult time. And you know, I really wouldn't be here if it wasn't by the grace of God, and if it wasn't by the fact that so many people acted selflessly in order to come out and help me out.
My name is Tuan. I've been with DC Tri for about 10 years now. You know, I've been a runner all my life. I just decided one day I wanted to do an Ironman. Don't own a bike, can't swim, but I decided I wanted to do an Ironman, so I wanted to join a tri club to help me. So that's what I did.
You know, my favorite race of the club all time, and it's no longer in existence, was the training tri around Haynes Point. That was my first race ever. Never swam competitive, never swam anything. You know, they come to you before the race. They asked you what your pace was. I have no idea. I think I was standing behind a woman, beautiful young lady. She said she was 130 per 100 meters. So I said I was 130 for 100 meters. And that was the day I found out that I was closer to 4 minutes per 100 meters as opposed to 130 per 100 meter. And I remember it was a 50 meters pool. And I remember thinking, oh my God, it's, you know, this pool is going on for freaking forever. So I went, I made it to the other side. I paused, and then on the way back, I think I stopped like 3 or 4 times to adjust my goggles. So it was a good learning experience, getting hit by other people, finding out what it's like to swim with people around you and longer than 25 meters. But it was my first introduction to the club, really. And everyone was so nice, even though, you know, I was probably the last one out of water that day. And from there, you know, it just built on there. And my favorite race of all time was the DC Tri practice tri. PeasantMan started out as a joke. You know, I go to happy hours, I throw out stupid ideas, and so during the happy hour, I met this girl, and I told her about my ideas, and it was just a passing. And then she kept emailing me and texting me and said, "Hey, you know, let's discuss it some more." And that girl, that woman, who is Adriana Anderson, the founder of High Cloud. I'll tell you a funny story about PeasantMan 1. So, you know, I was new to the club. I didn't know the area really well. So one of the first friend I had in the club was an old timer by the name of Hugh Harris. So I called Hugh. I said, "Hey, Hugh, you know, we need to make a bike course for Sandy Point for PeasantMan, and like, you know, can you show me around?" He said, "Sure, you know, I'll come down and we'll ride together." And you know, back in those days, we didn't have any fancy smartphones or iPhones. We just had and Hugh Harris and I went out and walked the course, and we didn't have any bike computers. So, you know, at every corner, I would write down the street where we turned, and I would ask Hugh, you know, what mile marker is this? And he would just pause for a minute, and he would say, "This feels like mile marker 10. So then I would jot down my piece of paper and say, "Hey, mile marker 10, turn at Route 301. Then we will bike a little bit more. Then I would ask Hugh, you know, where are we at? You know, we're about to make a turn." He'd say, "Oh, we've been riding about 2 miles." So I would jot down that, you know, turn up mile 12. into Main Street. So it was kind of like ad hoc from the beginning. We just kind of made up stuff as we go along, and I think that kind of flavor, that kind of carelessness, or that's what makes us different from everyone else, and that's why I think a lot of club members come back every year, because they know that it's not serious. It's kind of like a fun training day, and that's how we're able to bring in so many of these tri people over the years. Is they come for the fun and not the race. They're not trying to qualify for anything. They're just there to BS and have fun with fellow club members. And the fact that we can bring so many people together is, it's a cool thing, and it's all thanks to DC Tri. After the first PeasantMan, we decided that we want to go to Lake Anna, and we also knew it was going to cost us a lot more money. So we decided to make a concerted effort to recruit NTPers, because we wanted to market towards them as a training day. So for the first few years of the NTP, I would go there, either pretending to be an NTPer, or I would bring a friend to ask, specifically ask a PeasantMan question, just to get the propaganda going. So over the years, the NTP leaders have caught on to my little act. So nowadays, they just invite us in to talk directly to them. So we go in, every year at the first meeting, try to indoctrinate them, and it's cool because every year we get about 100 of them. One of my favorite stories is one of the girls that joined NTP was the name of Megan Jennison. I remember, I asked, she said, what race? She said she wanted to do an Ironman. That's her first race, and she asked me if that was unusual. I said, no, if you're going to do an Ironman, do PeasantMan. She came out and she did PeasantMan, and I told her to do the clinic the day before. Did she listen? No. So she went out, she did the swim, second overall female came out of the water. So I came up to her after the race and said, congrats, Megan, you kicked ass in the water. And she says, oh my God, Tuan, I almost drowned out there. I didn't know open water was like this. So it's kind of, it's kind of funny, even a swimmer like her would panic in her first race. And PeasantMan was part of that experience. And it's been like that for a lot of DC Tri members over the years. We've been going on for about 9 years. Each year, we get about 100. So, there's almost 900 DC Tri NTPers who've gone through PeasantMan over the years. And that is so awesome. And we are their introduction to triathlon in the club. It's probably their first opportunity to meet other club members, besides fellow NTPers, in a big group environment. So they get to talk and mingle with new members and get the close-knit feel to it. So it's a wonderful thing that we're being able to partner up with DC Tri over the years for that, and I'm thankful for that. A lot of people like myself, we joined the club to do triathlons, but we've gotten a lot more out of it. Whether that's racing experience, whether that's making friends, whether becoming amateur race directors or founders of Wave One. The opportunity is there for people to take advantage of, and it's because of DC Tri that many of us are friends that we would normally have, an experience that we wouldn't have. So. Thank you.
So my name is Bryan Frank. I am currently the treasurer of the DC Triathlon Club. I joined in 2008, and so it's been here almost a decade.
I'm Adam Stolzburg, a longtime member of DC Tri Club. Joined also around 2008. Different paths with Bryan here, and served on the board for 3 years, and am currently on the District Taco DC Tri Club Elite team.
So my story actually starts with another member of the club, and she had been doing a bunch of marathons and running races, and she saw people with triathlon certs, and she was like, I want to do one of those. And she read about DC Tri Club's NTP program, and she wanted to go to it. She saw the informational meeting in an advertisement, and she says, I want to go, and you're going with me. And I was like, okay, because she didn't want to go alone. She's like, you're going with me. I'm like, all right, I'll go. And it seemed really interesting, and I had a mountain bike, and I did my first race on the mountain bike. Turned out to have done really well on it, on the race, and I got been sucked in ever since to doing triathlons.
So it sounds like it was your first triathlon too, huh?
It was my first triathlon.
Do you still have that mountain bike?
I do still have the mountain bike. It is not in working order right now, but it is ripped apart, but I still have that bike.
I got into triathlon actually in like 2000 and 2001, and I'm not sure how that happened. After college, I got into biking and running because I always liked being outside and outdoors. And then I heard about triathlon, and I liked challenging myself and doing different things. And I'm like, oh, okay, swimming, why not? Just throw that in there, make it more of a challenge. Little did I know that when you're not a swimmer, getting into swimming is not easy.
So around 2009, 2010, we had a very small elite team group of people, and it was a very disorganized thing, as we had some elite team members, and we would send them off to races, and if they did well and podiumed and they raced in our kits, we would reimburse them for their race expenses. After a while, we kind of tried to more formalize it, and we kind of formed a team, and the problem is we kept losing all of our fast people in the club to the Snapple Triathlon team, which at the time was more of a national team with a very good pro team, which the organizers happened to be local to the DC area. And so we kind of lost a lot of them to that team, and then we reached out to them and said, hey, what can we do to keep all of the fast people within the club, but work with you to do some type of partnership. And so we basically combined the two teams, or at least the elite teams on both ends, to make one Snapple elite team with the DC Tri Club. And that went for 5 or 6 years of a combined effort of the Snapple people organizing our elite team. Basically, we gave them money to organize and kind of sponsor our elite team, so that kept all the fast people in the club, but let them race as a team with support and sponsorship. Nations has happened for 10 years now. For a couple years, there was the DC Triathlon in June that happened for 3 years. We had a second hometown race. Their ITU brought, the Brownlee brothers, and brought Andy Potts and all the, Javier Gomez. They've raced on the streets of DC. So we've had an ITU race here in DC, and that was really cool. And there was an age group race associated with it, so we got to race on the same course that, Alistair Brownlee and Javier Gomez raced on, and that was a lot of fun.
And there's no reason that can't happen again.
That's true.
The founding people of DC Tri Club have moved on. There's not really anyone that founded the club that's still in the club, but the renewed energy that I hope we can find and help develop to get the club, continue the progress that we've made, energize people and show them that it's a great avenue for the friendships that Bryan was describing, and the fun is something that I hope everybody can take away from this event and from other events that we have throughout the year. It's an all volunteer club, and except for one paid administrative assistant.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where sometimes when you're working in your job, you put in a lot. Yes, you get paid, but you don't really see the benefits. And I think DC Tri Club, everybody that puts in can see the benefits.
Say thanks to everyone who continues to volunteer for the DC Tri Club and continuing to grow it and make it what it is. Everything is basically volunteer run, and it's just for love of triathlon and love of the relationships that people make. So keep that up. I'm glad we're still here 15 years later, and the club is going strong, and hopefully we're here 15 years from now with another gala and maybe reminiscing some more.
I'm really excited about where the club has come. I'm really excited by the kind of leadership we've seen come through the ranks, people who have worked their way from the NTP program all the way up to board positions, and I'm really hopeful for the club. I think it's done great things for the sport of triathlon, and it's done a lot of great things for the lives of a lot of athletes in this area. And as excited as I am for where it's come into the last 15 years, I'm really excited about where it's going in the next 15. So I look forward to talking to you again in 15 years.
Happy birthday, DC Triathlon Club.
Happy birthday, DC Tri! Recording live from Kona, Hawaii, we want to wish you, DC Tri, a happy anniversary!
Happy 30th anniversary!
Happy 30th anniversary!
Yay!
DC Tri!
Happy birthday! 15 more years!
Thank you.
Yeah.